Welcome to the first episode of Podcast in the Prairie. This whole podcast was inspired by Madison's local Wart Radio Public Access Hour show. Jordan was invited on by a friend to discuss home air quality, and it made us realize, why don't we have a casual conversational show discussing things we're interested in, like native plants, conservation, and overall topics of sustainability. We are also recording in our 3.5 acre prairie on Madison's south side. So I am Kristen Spiker. I am the owner of Prairie Fairy Native Plants based in Madison, Wisconsin. You can visit us at prairiefairymadison.com to learn more about us. And handling our tech today is Jordan Spiker, our principal infrastructure engineer, also known as my husband. And our first very brave guest is Dave Evans. Dave is a Fitchburg, Wisconsin resident. He lives in a sustainability-focused subdivision, and HOA is an active member of his HOA's eco team and has contributed to the City of Fitchburg Sustainability Plan. Thanks, Dave, for joining today.
Well, thanks for having me, Kristen and Jordan. I appreciate your being able to sit out here in the prairie. It's great.
Yeah, we're going to have fun. So, just to give a brief idea of what we're going to talk about today, we're going to talk about Dave's experience with living in a sustainability-focused HOA, his gardening journey with native plants. We're also going to discuss taking actions with neighbors and community members for sustainability projects and the lessons learned from those experiences. So we really hope that listeners have something to take away today if they have interest in organizing with neighbors or people within their wider community on sustainability-based projects. Okay, so the first thing we're going to talk about is TerraVessa. TerraVessa is the sustainability-focused subdivision in Fitchburg, Wisconsin. And I just want to point out that this subdivision really caught my attention because we were looking for a house about 2.5 years ago. And most new builds in Dane County were in an HOA, and most certainly did not have any kind of sustainability or eco focus. And some went even further to say, to kind of dictate what kind of plants were even allowed in your yard, like they can't be past a certain height, and if they looked weedy, it's like the worst one. I was reading through the covenants because obviously native plant gardening is such an important part of my life, and the worst one I saw was saying that if anything looked weedy by their standards, they could actually go in and remove the garden bed from your yard, which was just way too far for anything I would ever consider. And TerraVessa, on the other hand, actually boasts quite a bit about their native plant installations and how they use that in their, how they handle stormwater, things like that. When you drive through TerraVessa, you see native plants in many people's yards. So we're going to talk about that today. And I just think it serves as a really interesting model in Dane County of a subdivision that is encouraging really great environmentally focused behaviors, both in the subdivision and in the people who move there. So can you tell me a little bit, Dave, about TerraVessa and their values and what kind of values and projects that they boast about?
Sure. So it was kind of interesting. We had really no idea about the sustainable themes that were going on at TerraVessa. We were looking for a place that actually just had, in my mind, good southern exposure for solar panels.
Mm-hmm.
And they had relatively small lots. And so we saw these signs, years before we moved there about, this neighborhood coming. And we snagged one of the lots pretty early on in the process. And, thought about solar panels right from the start. And then, as we lived there, we started figuring out that there was just a ton of things going on in the neighborhood that were sustainable. Mm. And just a few examples. I mean, at the time we moved in, it really looked a lot like an old retired cornfield.
Sure.
But pretty soon we realized that there was a savanna on one side, and there were prairies that were being started. There was a wetlands, and come to find out, approximately 50% of the development was devoted to natural areas and green space. 25% of the development, I think, was devoted to native area restoration.
Mm.
But then so many other things going on in the community as well. The school, for example, is a net zero school,
Wow.
Wisconsin's first, Forest Edge, and they have geothermal heating and cooling. Their roof has a ton of solar panels. They've got prairie, they've got woodlands, and then the whole neighborhood really has lots of areas that are prairie or woodlands or marsh. Some of it native, but a lot of it has been also added after they started building the prairie.
Mm.
Particularly like the stormwater system. It's interesting. They call them TIAs, terrace infiltration areas. And so they filled those areas with native plants that help with the stormwater management, and all the water eventually ends up in Lake Wabisa.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting to think what it would be like as a kid growing up there, right?
Oh,
And
right.
walkable schools, surrounded by nature.
Yes.
So I looked at TerraVessa's website, and they talk a lot about sustainability with the native plants, but then also they mention how transportation is a big priority of theirs. So bikeability, they mention they're a 20-minute bike ride to downtown. They have public transportation access right within the subdivision.
Yep.
They talk about possibilities for future car sharing. And then also, it seems like it seems like they have won an award for, in fact, their design for their stormwater management. And I'm just going to read this from their website. The stormwater management plan at TerraVessa, consisting of bio-infiltration swales and basins, sediment basins, and rain gardens, incorporates wetland restoration, native prairie establishment, and the formation of native plant communities. The stormwater pond captures and treats additional runoff, as well as enhances the natural wetland and prairie buffers in the open spaces. They cite wanting to protect Lake Wabisa and looking at reducing flooding, which we all know in the Madison area is certainly a problem during the heavy storms we sometimes get, and with climate change very likely to continue and become possibly worse. And they also talk about wanting to prevent erosion as well. So they've, looked at the impact on the area and have built in their infrastructure to minimize that impact. They also talk about possible urban farming opportunities, community gardens, that kind of thing. They mentioned the walkable schools, just like you mentioned Forest Edge.
Sure.
And then solar incentives for residents, that kind of thing. So I just really wanted to introduce TerraVessa and kind of share it out as a model for listeners, as something if they are hoping to get their subdivision or HOA to consider more sustainability-focused practices. This could be kind of a guiding star, something to learn more from. You can learn more at TerraVessa.com or search online for TerraVessa Fitchburg. And there might even be people that you could contact to, learn more about how to just kind of get that kind of initiative going within your own community.
Sure.
All right. Let's talk about your garden a little bit. So you moved to TerraVessa, a big part of which was because of its solar access, which is fantastic. Since then, you've also converted a big chunk of your entire yard to native plantings. You gave me a tour of about a month or two ago. It was, and it was just absolutely stunning. I would say at the time, a lot of the plants were maybe 3 feet tall. So, it really has a very natural prairie look to it. So I'd love to learn a little bit more about your process. How did you get started with native plants in your own yard?
Sure. So, as we talked about the terrace infiltration areas there at TerraVessa, it was kind of interesting seeing those being put in and, finding out, well, what's going on here and what species are they putting in and, why are they doing this? And so at that time, I just kind of thought, well, how can we do something like that? We'd like to mow less. We still had a gas mower. Um, we got some quotes for like a lawn that were just crazy expensive.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had them put in basically just grass over the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then...
And may I interrupt? Is this because as a new build, you basically had the choice of like how to handle a lawn for a new build?
Yes.
Okay.
So we had to put in some kind of a lawn.
Yeah.
And a certain number of trees, which was good. But basically the builder said, well, I can put, this Kentucky bluegrass mix in here and I can put this over there. And we're like, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
And then I tore that out, kind of manually did a lot of sod removal in the backyard. And then we started redoing it ourselves. We put in tall grass prairie in the very back. There's a bike path right behind our house, and so we thought maybe we could get a little bit of privacy. So we put in tall grass prairie and then kind of just a medium prairie, and then getting a little shorter as we got closer to the house. And so that was all seed.
Okay.
And basically then after that, I started thinking, well, I'm kind of running out of room in the back. So I moved to the front and the sides, kind of got that done.
Mm-hmm.
And those areas actually kind of look a little bit like the infiltration areas at TerraVessa.
That's really neat that you were able to use the plantings from your own subdivision as a guide and as inspiration, because I think a lot of people get really overwhelmed with what plants to choose. And so the fact that that took out some of the guesswork for you
Right, exactly.
is really nice.
Yes. Yeah, that was helpful. I mean, and the nice thing is, since it's being done in the neighborhood, it kind of feels like it fits.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right. It's cohesive.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And then so after we finished 75 to 80% of our yard, I kind of did my neighbor's backyard, and not the whole thing, but 500 square feet, I think, and that's turned out to be a good project too.
Nice. That's very fun. What have been things that you wish you did a little differently with your garden now that you've been doing it for a few years?
Well, so, as we talked about a little earlier, the mistakes are kind of part of the process, but some of the things I did that I would just as soon not see other people have to go through. So I heard a little bit about sheet mulching, but I mean, initially I just tore up the turf, probably exposed a lot of weed seeds, and ended up with, I don't want to call it a mess, but it didn't look the greatest.
Mm-hmm.
But then I would see some flowers coming up, and I thought, oh, it's starting to look better. And I realized that I should have been mowing it.
Okay.
I didn't understand that, you really need to keep it down a little bit in those first years, and, to fight the annual weeds that are going to come in. So, then you spend a little more time weeding if you've done it that way.
Yeah.
And, you kind of get a little worried about, are the neighbors going to complain about this? How's it going to look? The other thing I kind of worried about was, I made so many mistakes that, kind of worked out last year or the winter of 24.
Mm-hmm.
I started planting seeds in my house way too early.
Ah, so you mean like sowing your own plant, like trying to grow your own plants?
Growing my own plants.
Yep.
I started in the house, in the laundry room for warmth. And like around February, I had pretty much the entire house filled with plants. And in the windowsills and just all over the place. And so that was a little too much.
Oh my gosh. And just fun fact, I'm going to interject. Dave and I think we met because you bought some plants at some point, but then we kind of ran into each other on the Lower Yahara bike path, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
We sat and chatted about native plants for a while. And then since then, we've kind of been emailing back and forth. And I remember something we talked about quite a bit was our grow operations. And so you
Yes.
were growing native plants under grow lights. We were also growing native plants under grow lights, and we were just swapping stories because we also made mistakes. You know, we started
Oh,
with
yeah.
some of our grow light operation in our basement, and it ended up just becoming so humid in our basement, which would then, you know, send that humidity throughout our whole house with you know, HVAC and everything. And so we were like, oh, we need to get this out of here. So it's just kind of funny how,
Yeah.
you know, I think that's a path we both shared a little bit on, like, how to really grow a lot of plants,
Right.
and the pitfalls of, you know, like just the lessons you have to learn the hard
Right.
way going through that experience.
You know, just like, well, I'm never going to do that
Yeah,
again.
yeah. So what did you shift to with your plant growing operation then?
Well, so I ended up doing a lot of, I learned how to do winter sowing in milk jugs.
Yeah.
And that worked pretty well. It was kind of labor intensive. Um, and, you know, and then when I did my neighbor's yard, I kind of thought, well, it's pretty easy to get a lot with seed,
Yeah.
with, you know, just a mix of seeds. And it's kind of entertaining. You just get to see what comes up. And, you know, since it's my neighbor's yard, I probably don't care as much about weeds, but I do just trim it and mow it.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, so since I've run out of yard, that's kind of where I'm at.
Hence getting involved in the rest of the
Exactly.
we can just plant in other people's in the shared spaces,
That's
right?
right. Will you let me plant in your yard?
I mean, and that's a big reason we also, you know, we're like, we lived in a West Side neighborhood in Madison, and we converted a lot of our yard as well to native plants, and we're like, we would love more
What's
space
next?
than this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you bought a farm.
Yeah, so we bought, you know, a big, a farm on the south side, and here we are in our, you know, prairie now. So let's see. What about, you mentioned mowing. Any other, now that your yard is a little more mature, how do you manage weeds, and what other maintenance tips have you learned over time?
Well, so I did learn a lot about, I guess I'd say, the use of cardboard
Mm-hmm.
when planting. You know, it was kind of a lot of work to go to the dump and get cardboard and cut it. Now I'm kind of thinking what I've used recently is rolls of builder's paper to put down.
Yeah.
So that seems to, I think, going to work. Other things, you know, I didn't really understand the Chelsea chop, I guess they call it.
Mm-hmm.
And so things look a lot more under control if you keep them from getting really leggy and
Mm-hmm.
tall. And so I think I'm going to be using more of that process.
That's really smart. Do you just kind of Chelsea chop based on, like, oh, it's starting to look leggy, or do you try to time it where you're like, oh, like in spring I'm just going to go through and do a Chelsea chop?
Mostly just the latter.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't really understand how some of these plants would get really tall.
Yeah.
And I do have some areas that are supposed to be short
Yeah.
per the regulations.
Oh, yeah.
So what I'm finding now is that if you do cut them, like, you know, in June, cut them down, you know, now here it is in August and they look good, they're blooming again.
Yes. Yes.
So, you know, it's really kind of a bonus.
That's a good way to do it. And for anyone who doesn't know what a Chelsea chop is, it is basically going and giving a bit of a haircut. I think there's a certain percentage that is usually recommended to cut back.
Yes.
I think the biggest thing you want to remember is to not cut below the lowest leaf point, because a
Okay,
lot of plants
interesting.
grow out of that that kind of nodule of the leaf where it
Yeah.
meets the stem. Something I kind of like to joke about. So we have various gardens on our property, and I try to plant a lot of gardens within our deer fencing, so obviously we don't get deer grazing because we can have dozens of deer in our property at a single time. But the main garden I planted that is exposed to deer does get nibbled on. Like, you can see them right in there eating the plants, but they end up basically performing a Chelsea chop. Everything still blooms later in the season.
Interesting.
So in a way, it's like my tidiest looking garden because the deer are just like maintaining it for me.
Right.
So in a way, you know, I'm appreciating the resilience of native plants with the
Yes,
Chelsea chop, and then just
exactly.
like how actually the deer aren't necessarily the worst thing in the world when it
Right.
comes to, like,
Huh.
you know, they're not destroying the garden, they're actually helping it look kind of nice.
Right.
So
I felt the same way about rabbits coming
Yeah.
into our yard. It's like, well, I would chase them away. And then after a while, I realized I've got enough. They can nibble.
Yes, I actually think like that's another thing. When I lived in a suburb, I definitely put a lot of caging around my plants, and you have to do that if you have a
Sure.
lot of rabbit pressure because they will just destroy your garden.
Right.
But that's where I'm just like, all right, I'm just going to plant so many native plants to overwhelm them
Exactly.
that like they can nibble all they want, and I'm still gonna have plenty left for myself. So
Yes.
obviously that is not necessarily accessible to everyone, but
Right.
it's the thing that's worked best for me at this point and the least
Right.
stressful.
Exactly. I remember getting a couple of wild strawberry plants,
Ooh.
and initially I was very concerned when the rabbits would chew on them, but then I realized after about a year you have 1,000 wild strawberry plants,
Yeah.
and so it's kind of like, well, enjoy the buffet
Yeah.
because there's more.
That's awesome. Yes, so true. What's next for your garden?
So we've got a little project in the area to do some sustainable lawns that look a little more conventional. And so I put down a bunch of cardboard and then compost, and then no-mow seed. See how that does.
That's a fun experiment. I haven't worked with that at all yet, but I could definitely see some areas where that could be really useful too, especially like if you have an incline and you just,
Sure.
I get a lot of folks in our customers who are just like, I have a big incline, I hate mowing, I want to convert it to native plants.
Right.
And I think that is a good way to, that's a great solution. A lot of folks try to seed the area and it washes away. So you do
Yes,
have to be
yes.
mindful of how to seed that. There are ways to do it. And I think yeah, there's ways to do it, and it might be using like the I can't remember what that's called, but like kind of straw you put on top to try to keep seeds in place.
Right.
But I've heard people say like it all washed away. So, but I can definitely see that no-mow grass being a great option for just like having a nice incline that you don't have to run your lawnmower over.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
awesome. Next, we're going to talk about your involvement, Dave, in the Fitchburg Sustainability Plan. Can you tell me a little bit about what the goal of the plan was and what types of initiatives it covers?
Sure. So, one thing I've picked up about Fitchburg is that they've been doing sustainability for a long time. And you can really kind of tell with the way the area is developed. I mean, there's a lot of protected areas. But I think what they wanted to do possibly was to get something official down on paper that they could say, this is our plan.
Mm-hmm.
And so it seems that their main goals, and I'm kind of saying what I think they were trying to do, they want to improve, or I think they want to improve the quality of life. And in particular, they want to do it in a way that's going to help mitigate the financial costs of climate change.
Yes.
And so, they've got everything that they're doing is trying to address like the local problems, but also big problems like carbon.
Mm-hmm.
And so every one of our objectives had something to do with, well, how much carbon can we reduce if we do this? And what things can we do, locally to help the global situation, but also help everybody in Fitchburg.
Mm-hmm.
And so they had a number of areas, and one thing I want to mention too about their sustainability, if you go down to the Fitchburg City Hall area, the library is there. The library is LEED certified. They've got geothermal.
Wow.
Then they've got the City Hall building, which has solar panels. And, everything that they've been doing seems to be, right on track.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I feel like, too, something I noticed just driving through the area is there's bike lanes everywhere.
Right.
So it's extremely bikeable, and people
Right.
use it.
Yes,
There are people
exactly.
cycling out there constantly.
Yeah. I mean, some of my neighbors bike, and maybe, I'm just not used to this idea, but they just bike every day of the year.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great to see.
In fact, in TerraVessa, they plow the bike trails before they plow the roads. So,
Awesome.
yeah.
Yeah, I was looking at the Fitchburg Sustainability Plan too, and just to reiterate a little bit of what you said, they talk a lot about reducing greenhouse gas emissions, to fight climate change. And then some of the co-benefits of that are, like you said, improving quality of life, reducing costs long term. And, if you look through the plan, there's aspects of also providing for their own security as climate change evolves and advances.
Right.
And I think that's a really interesting aspect. And so it looks like it's kind of broken down into a number of priority areas. And some examples are transportation and land use, buildings and energy, water and wastewater, health and safety, and the list goes on.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to hear more about your involvement, and we're going to jump to that. But I just kind of wanted to give people a little bit of an example, too. So, like, if you dive down into, like, the transportation and land use, they break out their strategies, like decrease total community-wide vehicle miles traveled by 5% by 2030, and increase public transit commuter ridership from 1.3% to 3.3% by 2030. So they have these, and there's more is in addition to that. And then if you even dig deeper into each one of those kind of action or into those strategies, there's like individual actions that they as the city hope to achieve by a certain date. And then at the end of each section, they also have a list of ways you can help as an individual, a household, or a business. So I think it's a
Right.
really practical guide, both as like, this is what we're doing as a city sponsored thing, but also how we all can participate and contribute.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I'm also a little bit curious, and I don't know how much you're familiar with this aspect, but you mentioned Fitchburg has been very focused on sustainability for a long time. Do you know how the sustainability plan itself got jump started? How did that get off the ground?
Sure. Well, I only know about how it got started as far as being asked to not being asked to participate, but given the opportunity to participate. So there was a survey that was sent out, community-wide survey, and I think they were basically asking, what things do you consider important? Can you rank these things? It was that kind of a survey. And then there's I think it's called Green Fitchburg newsletter, where they said, basically, we're looking for volunteers to help with this. And so, meetings were scheduled, a consultant was brought in, and that consultant had access to a lot of data and information from what other cities are doing and other municipalities are doing. So it was a great resource, and we went through that and started saying, well, what can we do? What do we consider important? Let's rank some of these things and, start whittling it down.
That's amazing. So that takes away a lot of the overwhelm of
Exactly.
starting something from the ground up. You don't
Right.
have to reinvent the wheel. You can already look at what other communities have tried, learn from their mistakes or what has worked for them, and also decide what is relevant to you and leave behind what isn't.
Right.
That's a really neat strategy. And then what did you get involved in specifically?
So I was involved, I think, in 2 subcommittees. One of them was sustainable agriculture, and one of them was, I think it was mobility or transportation. And, it was interesting because at that time, the federal government was interested in putting in, things like EV chargers, and in particular, they were trying to put them into communities that were not as likely to have EV chargers, people that didn't have a home with a charger in their garage. And so, one of the things I did on that committee was I just basically looked at the map that the government provided and drove around Fitchburg looking for possible places where EV charging could be located. So that was just a fun little part of it.
Well, then you're getting to know Fitchburg, your community,
Exactly.
more. That's
Exactly.
really fun. What was the process? What was the process of being involved like? Were there a lot of meetings? Was a lot of email communication? I'm just kind of trying to understand the logistics so that if someone listening is like, "Ooh, I would like to try to support something like that in my
Sure.
community or do something similar," just so they can kind of expect like, what was it actually like being involved on the ground?
Right. So the consultant pretty much ran the organizational aspects of it. He had a template, but I mean, I think it's really something that I don't want to say you don't need the consultant. For example, he brought a database,
Yeah.
and that there are similar databases online that you can access for free.
Hmm.
So, I mean, I think you could really do this, as a community, even a neighborhood.
Yeah.
You could look at this and say, um, these are the kind of things we want to do. And you can see, on a map, and you can look at all of the sustainability plans for thousands of communities.
Wow.
And so what we did was we started with that, and we met weekly, and did our work. There wasn't a ton of email
Mm-hmm.
because we were meeting in person.
Mm-hmm.
This
Which
was
is a
all
great way to get to know your neighbors and
exactly,
fellow community members.
and and see who's doing what,
Mm-hmm.
and see who can, people in the community and the Fitchburg government were involved.
Oh, cool.
So you could see, oh, this guy's the sustainability guy
Yeah.
at Fitchburg.
You're learning who's who in Fitchburg and probably more about how government works,
Exactly.
things of how to become more involved.
Right.
Did you send me the link of the databases you were just referring to?
If I haven't, I will.
Yeah, that could be something we share out to
Sure.
for folks if they're interested.
Sure.
What would you say are some of the challenges you ran into during this whole process?
Well, so one that was kind of interesting that stuck in my mind, and it produced a little bit of a struggle, is we didn't really have anybody from the agricultural community
Mm-hmm.
involved in our committee to work on sustainable agriculture.
Yeah.
So we tried to make some contacts, but it would have been really helpful to have somebody to talk to that could say, well, here's what we're doing,
Mm-hmm.
or here's what works, and that was, I suspect that they got that input,
Right.
but we didn't have
Yeah.
anybody at that point.
Right. So you're doing your best you can
Exactly.
without maybe some of the critical input of people who are, living the actual,
Right.
doing the people responsible for doing the things that you guys are really looking to
Exactly.
do. Yeah, that's a
Exactly.
really interesting point. And, I can see, don't let perfect be the enemy of good, right? Like it's still
Right.
worth doing the work, even if you can't find the contacts necessarily. But it also, the way when I read through the Fitchburg Sustainability Plan, it really felt like a living document too.
Right.
It doesn't have to be set in stone. It can really be like, we're looking into a proposal for this. We're, looking into a strategy for this. So
Exactly.
hopefully it's just something that can keep evolving and growing over time.
Right. And things change so quickly.
Mm-hmm.
They have to be living documents. You can't say this is our plan from 5 years ago
Right.
and we're sticking to it.
You're so right. Yep. All right. Well, do you have any advice for folks who would like to try to spearhead a sustainability plan for their municipality, or maybe looking to get involved in a municipal sustainability plan if this is like their first time getting involved in something like that?
I guess I mean, Fitchburg made it pretty easy,
Mm-hmm.
but that database that I'm going to send you the link to, I
Yeah.
mean, it had so many good ideas, and you can, I think, whittle it down to say, what about communities that are, less than 5,000 people or less than 1,000 people? What are they doing? And, and a lot of these things, particularly if you know the people in your city government, you can say, hey, have we ever thought about doing this? This is something I could volunteer for.
Yeah.
So I think that would be the thing to just, get involved, muddle through it if you have to. You'll meet people and you'll get ideas.
Yeah. I love mentioning too, muddling through it. Like, expect that you're going to make mistakes.
Right.
And expect things to possibly be hard at times, or to disagree with people, but you're going to work through it, right? 'Cause
Exactly.
that's a really good point. I also love the idea, right? Like, not every size fits all. So like learning about how smaller communities do it. If you're in a smaller community, that makes a lot of sense.
Sure.
How fun. All right. Well, let's talk next. You got involved both in this Fitchburg Sustainability Plan, but you also then got involved in your HOA, TerraVessa's Eco Team. So let's talk about that a little bit. Tell me about the Eco Team. What is its mission, and how did this team come about?
Sure. So I don't know. I don't know if we have a mission.
Oh, sure.
Other than, save the planet.
Great.
But, which, we'll get there. But, the way we came into being was, I think everybody on the team is somebody that probably contacted the developer and said, is this something we could do? And he might have said something like, well, yes, are you interested in doing that? And so people were, trying to get some trees or, just doing various things around the development, possibly on their own. And so the developer realized, hey, that person's a candidate to be on the HOA. So we actually have, on the HOA, we have kind of a eco, I don't want to say division, but a little subgroup that's devoted to ecology at TerraVessa.
Awesome. Okay. What are some of the projects you guys have already done?
So in the spring, we had I guess you'd call it either a beautification or just a garbage pickup. There's still lots of construction work going on at TerraVessa. It's supposed to finish up, I think, in the next year or so. That produces a lot of garbage, and it flies around the neighborhood. So we went around the neighborhood, and with garbage bags, it was on Earth Day, and we picked up garbage.
Cool.
And on that same day, we had some mulch from the city delivered, and we mulched the trees in the park.
Cool.
So that was kind of our first project. That was spring of 2025.
Neat. Very neat. And what are some projects coming up next?
So we did plant some trees. And our next big project, which is kind of going on right now, is we've identified I guess they call them outlot in the HOA that belongs to the HOA. And we're going to put a mini park in there.
So these are like shared community spaces.
Exactly.
Got it.
Yep. And so we're going to have some park benches and some trees and some native plants. And if everything we did there, we tried to say, well, let's stick with natives. And, let's not put in, concrete if we can help it.
Yeah.
And, and it's kind of been a real learning process that we're next probably or hopefully going to tackle a bigger lot.
Oh, fun.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So you guys have been busy. When I took the little tour of TerraVessa you gave me, you showed me those trees too. And it was really nice. It was along a bike path. So, I think something I also love about this subdivision is there's tons of people walking out, walking their kids, walking their pets. So, I mean, I can only imagine what you all are going to keep accomplishing over time as new people become involved,
Right, exactly.
So, what was the process like for identifying projects to work on?
So, it's been kind of funny. Things have kind of fallen into our lap a little bit. So I asked the city forester if we could get a tree in our front terrace, and she said yes, and that got planted. And then I think she said something about, we'll have some more trees, but we would need volunteers to plant them.
Great.
So she lined up 5 trees. There were actually what they call gravel pit trees, so pretty small, that we planted in the park. And so that was that was kind of a cool thing to get done.
Yeah, really.
And basically we just had to water them through the drought and just kind of make sure they've got a good first year of life.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is the ideas come from folks on the eco team. They propose it. They take the steps to do it. But then even just by reaching out to some of these resources, opportunities open up.
Right, exactly.
You weren't expecting these additional trees.
Right.
So sometimes just reaching out and asking questions can lead to more things too.
Exactly. And then the developer of the head of the development, Phil, basically said, he kind of saw what we were doing and said, would you like to develop this lot and come up with a plan for me?
Wow, cool. So now it's not even your team necessarily doing the mental labor of coming up with the ideas, like the developer themselves look at you as someone who wants to take action, someone who has ideas, and so they're coming to you with like invitations now.
So far,
Yeah.
yes.
That's fantastic. That's, I mean, neat, you know?
Yeah.
Neat way to do it. And then how does actually executing on these projects come together? Are you, basically like reaching out to the rest of the team? You're kind of deciding on what to move forward with. You meet in person to discuss. I'm just curious about the logistics a little bit.
Sure. So what we've done, like at least for the first few projects, we would meet at a neighborhood coffee shop and say, well, we should have a cleanup day, and then organize that. The city donated bags, and we purchased some buckets and some garbage pickup devices, and then it was put out over social media.
Yeah.
And there's actually an HOA app.
Oh, fun.
Yeah. And so we had a very good turnout.
Yeah.
Lots of people wanted to help.
Oh, that's the best.
Yeah.
That's so cool. How do you guys get funding for your projects?
So our developer has been nice enough to fund some of these initiatives, the ones that needed funding, and the city has really pitched in a lot.
Wow.
Not so much money, but just some expertise and a lot of materials like bark and mulch.
Oh, amazing.
And compost. So
wow, goes to show that there are resources out there.
Exactly.
And if I think, Dave, you had sent me some links to some of these resources as well, so we will include those out as well if people want to learn more about some of these resources.
Sure.
I'm also curious. So it sounds like you helped or you recruited people to join for projects through social media, and a lot of people joined. So getting people to join really was never a challenge, actually, if people really wanted to jump in.
It really hasn't been, no.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And it was funny, at some of our meetings in the coffee shop, somebody would come up to us and say, well, I was kind of listening, and I'm a biologist, or a plant biologist, and, can I help out?
Wow.
So that's been kind of cool.
I just want to say that speaks to the value of third spaces and
exactly.
how, if you were just sitting in your house having this conversation or on a Zoom call, boy, that never would happen.
Right.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Did you notice any benefits of participating in the eco team beyond the sustainability outcomes?
Well, I hope that when we finish this park, I hope it's going to be a place that people want to go to. So hopefully that'll build community. And, our first project has been kind of a learning experience where we've done a lot of it over email, which works pretty good, but, there's some confusion. Now that we've got one project almost under our belt, I think our team is going to get stronger, and we know who to contact for things. I think it's going to, really help. And we also have community people that are saying, oh, you're putting in a butterfly garden. We're putting up signs and stuff.
Oh, great way to do it. Okay, so how you're reaching people. And I'm kind of trying to summarize this. So if people are looking to organize in their own neighborhood, you're putting things out on social media, you're putting up signs related to your project and how to reach out. You're getting together in public spaces where people who happen to be near your own neighbors will be, because this coffee shop is directly in TerraVessa, right? This is Tati,
yes.
if it's called. Yeah.
Yep.
And then, and then continuing there with like email and things like that.
Right.
So that's it. That's really neat. It goes to show how there's different ways to get people involved, and a lot of that actually is just physical space too.
Exactly.
Putting those signs out, that kind of thing.
Right.
And then, do you think neighbors within TerraVessa, the ones who didn't necessarily get involved, do you think they seem to appreciate the team's efforts? Have you received positive feedback, negative feedback?
Well, it's interesting. People have opinions.
Yep.
Not everybody loves I shouldn't say not everybody loves. I should say lots of people like conventional lawns.
Yes.
And, sometimes at the end of the year, the prairie areas can kind of look a little tired.
They start getting brown and going to seed.
Right. And it's a critical time.
Yes.
And so, I think the temptation is well, let's mow them to make them look better. So, you know, um, I think we need to manage, the communication a little bit to make sure we know why we're letting them go over the winter, or
Yeah.
things like that.
Yeah.
But I think hopefully people are going to be appreciative of what we're trying to do.
Awesome. Let's talk a little bit about overall lessons learned from working with neighbors within the greater city and community. In general, we talked about the Fitchburg Sustainability
Mm-hmm.
Plan. We talked about the Eco Team. So let's look at some of these big takeaways for organizing, especially for folks who may want to borrow some of these ideas either within their HOA, within their neighborhood association, just on their block, or maybe in their small town municipality
Yeah.
or large city even. I mean, you don't have to solve for all those problems, but just, people might be coming at this from different angles. So what are some of the big lessons learned along the way for you?
Well, I was wondering if you were going to take it a step further
Mm-hmm.
and not a group, but just your household,
Oh, I love it. Yeah.
because pretty much everything that was in the database that we looked at for the Fitchburg Sustainability Project, those are the kind of things that we're doing in the community.
Mm-hmm.
And the things that we're doing in the community are the same types of things that my wife and I wanted to do in our yard
Yeah.
and in our house. And so, you know, composting with food scraps, you know, can you put up solar panels? It's getting, I think, easier and easier to get your foot in the water with solar panels.
Yep.
Um, you know, a used EV is pretty affordable.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many things that you can do, and you can see these things going on. Whether it's a big city, like you can see the things that, for example, San Diego is doing,
Mm-hmm.
and you can see the things that Fitchburg is doing,
Yes.
and you can say, well, how can I do those kind of things? And it might seem like some huge thing, but you know maybe you can replace your gas lawnmower with an electric lawnmower.
Mm-hmm.
Every little bit helps.
Right. I love, and I think that's such a good way to look at it. And also, some people I think feel so overwhelmed by
Mm-hmm.
how much you can do that then we become paralyzed with making any kind of action. And so
Right.
that's where I just really love to recite the don't let perfection be the enemy of good, and
Exactly.
do what works for you. And if you can't be perfect with sustainability, that's okay. And that doesn't mean, you don't don't let it hold you back from the things you
Right.
can do, and don't feel like you're a failure.
Right.
And there can be some folks out there who have strong attitudes or just mindsets about doing everything perfectly, and don't let that deter you, I
Right.
think.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you can do it really small. I mean, obviously, so here you've got so much life in your prairie.
Mm-hmm.
Billions
Yeah.
of lives.
And for folks listening, we are literally surrounded by bees. I saw a butterfly on the native thistle behind Dave a while back. So I mean, we are being buzzed around right now.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And the funny thing is, you get used to it. It's like, oh, that's not a bee I should be afraid of.
Right.
And so that's kind of the interesting thing is, I mean, if you have a balcony, you can put a pot with some native plants in it if that's what you want to do.
Yeah.
And it really, after a few elections at the federal level, you know, I kind of had a choice between feeling helpless and, you know, throwing up my arms and
Yeah.
saying there's nothing I can do here, or planting a plant.
Yeah.
And it's it you know after you watch all of the life going on in a prairie, you realize, well, I had a small part of that, and it really helped me to help them.
Mm-hmm.
It's not always just people. I mean, it's all this life, and when you help them, it really helps you.
And even if it is on that small scale, like planting a pocket prairie in your yard or a balcony prairie or a 3-acre prairie, just seeing the life that comes from it does make you feel like you're having impact, even if the rest of the world feels like it's on fire. I think something else that, it's very tempting to feel pessimistic and cynical about the future. And I think something that helps me is I might not necessarily see personally the solution or how we overcome that, but I'm hoping that my efforts at least get us all through to that point, So it's like, who knows what the future holds, but hopefully we can just keep everyone's head above the water for a while, until the solutions from future generations possibly manifest. So,
yeah, and an interesting thing about that is what you're planting today might be around after you're long gone, and those future generations will appreciate it. And it's interesting, you talk about being, just doing the little things that you can. One of my neighbor ladies found just a, 2-foot triangle of dirt, I think underneath the street light or something in the neighborhood. And so she just went over and put some flowers in there, some natives, and a couple of little signs with butterflies on them. And it's kind of like, well, that's something.
Amazing.
Yeah,
a little bit, right? And you know what? That little bit might inspire someone else too.
Right.
So it's not necessarily just about the one action, but it's about the compounding effects of the action, how that affects. I mean, I think we were talking earlier about when you moved to TerraVessa, you weren't necessarily even into native plants at the time. It was really the actions of TerraVessa and their commitment to native plant restoration and the stormwater management that helped educate you about that, and suddenly you started bringing that into your yard.
Right.
So, I mean, it goes to show how the actions of others can really just, just build on each other and spread. So, that's awesome.
Yeah, I had never gardened a bit in my entire life, but then suddenly it became like, why aren't we doing this?
Yeah.
And I can kind of do it and figure it out a little bit. Yeah. And then the plants take over.
Yeah, absolutely. They do. And you learn a lot about patience and just appreciating a little bit of chaos sometimes too, I feel like. Yeah. Did you have more you wanted to talk about with lessons learned from the organizing?
Yeah, let's see. I don't. Oh, yeah, as far as organizing, I guess, the interesting thing I found out about Fitchburg and Dane County, is that they really want to help. They've got resources, they've got extra bark, they've got extra mulch and compost. They've got people that are growing plants, volunteers, and they will give those plants away to organizations.
Amazing.
And they will deliver this stuff for you. In the case of Fitchburg, it's kind of crazy that somebody will just show up with truckloads of materials for you.
Yeah, so you don't even have to have the truck yourself necessarily, because a lot of folks don't.
No, and free trees.
Wow.
It's been great, and so it's a very cooperative thing. They can use the help, and we can use their help.
Yeah.
So it kind of works out.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Great. Wow. Anything else you wanted to talk about before we kind of move into like our closing?
I don't think so.
Okay, good. Well, thank you, Dave, so much for joining us. Very brave of you for our first episode. I've had a lot of fun. I hope you have too.
I have. It's not been nearly as bad as I thought it was going to be.
Oh, great. A little scary. I just wanted to say to our listeners too, please share this out if you know anyone who has been curious about increasing sustainability within their own HOA or neighborhood, or if they're trying to learn more about leading organization efforts with their community. We'd also love to hear from you. Let us know what you think in the comments, if you have any ideas or advice you'd like to share, or if you have any follow-up questions as well. And also feel free to leave a comment if you have ideas for podcast topics or people to interview. Again, this is meant to be casual conversations, especially with folks in Dane County or wider Wisconsin. We just want to talk about native plants, conservation, and sustainability, and hopefully it's just a way for everyone to get to know their neighbors more and the folks within their own communities. So thanks for listening.
Thank you, Kristen.
Thanks, Dave.